Welcome to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Kentucky attorney Jeff Roberts has over 25 years of experience. He'll provide answers to your questions related to personal injury and automobile accidents, workers' compensation claims, and Social Security disability benefits. Let's join Jeff for this episode. And friends, welcome back. We are in Calloway County with attorney Jeff Roberts. Jeff, how are you this morning?
I'm doing good, Jim.
Buddy, today we're going to talk about lineman issues, lineman injuries, and these have to do with the guys. I mean, as the weather's changing, obviously, eventually we're going to get some snow and ice, and eventually we're going to have some power outages. Kind of happens every year, and you see all of the utility trucks on the highways, and they're usually going somewhere else. These guys are unsung heroes. I mean, I don't know how they get out there in the middle of the night in some of the worst weather, and they're up on telephone poles, electrical poles, trying to fix all these cables and all these wires and stuff like that. And they're linemen. But what's interesting about this community, this reciprocity, is you'll also have a lot of those guys coming in from out of state to help us should we have that issue. But when injuries occur, this is a workers' comp claim, basically, right?
Yes, it's definitely a workers' compensation claim. Depending on the nature of the injury, there could be potential other claims there as well. But and I agree with you 110%. The linemen that go out and restore the power after storms or even during a storm at times we owe a huge debt of gratitude for them. And we see it, as you talked about, you see them traveling down the road frequently. And when we had the tornado that come through western Kentucky a few years ago, we had linemen come from other states, other parts of Kentucky, but from other states as well that come to help restore power to this area. We have, obviously, there's hurricanes that hit Florida and did just the remnants of it that come up through the East Coast and did major damage in Georgia and North Carolina and other places. And so you have linemen from here as well that go help out and help to restore power in those communities. And I've always admired that about the electrical companies and the linemen that will essentially share their workers to go to places that have been hard hit from whatever type of natural disaster that may have occurred to help restore power. It's one of the things about this country and that there's a lot of things we may disagree on, but coming together to help out people in times of trouble, in times of natural disasters is something this country always comes together for and raises a lot of money. And the linemen go and take time away from their families to go help their fellow citizens out, and it's something that they should be proud of and something that we should all be very thankful for.
Well, I tell you, you get this kind of weather and, all you want to do is hunker down in the house, maybe, turn the TV on and have a nice warm meal. And you've got these guys, like I said, out there climbing up these power lines and trying to pull the new lines and get everything diagnosed and fixed and repaired. It takes a special kind of guy to do that. Your dad was a member of IBEW, wasn't he?
Yes, my dad was an electrician and was a member of IBEW for years and years. In fact, I'm assuming with his age now, he's let the membership lapse, but he actually, I think, is maybe a lifetime member. He was a member for so long from that. But yes, he was a member of IBEW. He was an electrician. He was not a lineman, though.
Right.
Yeah, most of his career was spent doing electrical work at General Tire in Mayfield.
So he was probably part of Local 816 out of Paducah?
Yes.
Probably
yeah,
so.
I'm pretty comfortable. I know it was Paducah, Local 816. I'm assuming that was still the number of it when he was there as well. And actually, he was a member of the Steelworkers Local as well, being an employee of General Tire. But at one point in his career, he did travel and work in various other states as well, working through the local. So.
That makes sense. So as we look at this, and we've talked about a lot of workers' comp situations in the past in previous episodes, and we'll mention a couple of those as we go forward. But if you're on the job in Kentucky and you're injured, generally speaking, you're going to qualify for workers' compensation. Likewise, however, if you're not a resident of Kentucky, but you're doing work here, or maybe you have a company that's based in Kentucky, you still are covered potentially under Kentucky workers' comp. So I mean, there's a lot of ways that people can get access to these benefits.
Correct. If you live and primarily work in another state, but you happen to come up because of a tornado or something of that nature, come to Kentucky to help out if the company that you normally work for loans you or sends you up to Kentucky to do work to restore power, and you get injured in Kentucky, then it's going to be a Kentucky workers' compensation claim. And I've represented linemen from other states that have been here and have been injured while they were working to try to restore power on different occasions. And really, what you in those type of cases, what the attorney should be doing is looking at Kentucky benefits versus and also looking to see if the state that the lineman normally works in, if the laws in that state would apply their workers' compensation laws to that injury as well. And if they would, then speaking with, and I've had these conversations several times, then I would reach out to an attorney in that state and talk with them about their workers' comp benefits to find out which state is going to be the best state for that injured worker to pursue their claim in. For years and years, Kentucky had lifetime medical benefits for a work-related injury. They unfortunately, the legislature took that away in 2018. As far as could potentially still get lifetime, but it's not a guarantee of lifetime like it used to be. But frequently, a lot of times when I was talking to other attorneys and we talked about the income benefits and the medical benefits, they were surprised to hear that Kentucky had the lifetime medical, and that frequently made the decision that it was best to pursue it in Kentucky because the person's injury was one that was going to cause them problems from now on out. So.
Yeah, and I know usually now it's what, a 15-year term, and then they reapply, or you petition again to say, hey, these benefits need to be extended. Is that roughly how it goes?
Correct. If it's a permanent injury, then and you don't let the statute of limitations expire, then the medical will continue for 15 years from the date of the injury. And near the end of that 15 years, you can apply to have the benefits extended for a lifetime at that point in time. Now, certain injuries, like if someone's permanently totally disabled, they still get lifetime benefits. If you've had an amputation in prosthetic limb, they still get lifetime benefits without having to go through that process. But most workers are going to have to go through that process that have been injured since July of 2018.
In that decision, is that the judge's discretion whether or not to automatically grant the lifetime benefits, or is that something that's statutorily, no, this is what's going to happen for an amputation?
That's in the statute.
It is.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's statute.
Okay.
Yeah, the judge can't. Judge could take it away, but then you go up on appeal and it's going to be restored because the statute says you get it. From that standpoint, so no workers' comp judge in Kentucky would not follow the statute from that standpoint. So, but in those situations, but most, 90+% of the cases, 15 years is going to be the limit, and then you have to apply to get the lifetime.
Okay, that makes sense. So, when I'm looking at this, I see these, obviously the roadways are bad already because that's what, that was due to the weather, and that's probably what knocked the power out. But you've got these guys traveling down the highway, probably at night, probably, poor weather conditions. So you could have a wreck in transit. Maybe you haven't gotten to the, quote, job site yet, but you have a wreck there. That would qualify for workers' comp and possibly another civil action, right? A third-party case. Is that right?
Correct. It's going to depend on what caused the wreck from that standpoint. But that's the reason I said you'd have a workers' comp claim and potentially other types of claims, because if it is in transit and somebody runs a stop sign and runs out in front of the lineman's truck and causes a wreck, then they've got the workers' compensation claim plus the claim against the at-fault driver in that setting.
So as we get into this, I mean, obviously back in episode, I think it was 45. Yeah, episode 7. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page here as my notes. Episode 45, we did a full-blown episode on electrical injuries. But again, that's more in a plant setting. That's more of a, okay, something happens in the plant, lockout, tag out, failure, or something like that, and somebody gets hurt. This is a little bit different, but there's still electrical injuries typically happening, or it could be a fall from a ladder as they're going up the pole. And there's a lot of different things that come in. Usually, you've handled some of these cases in the past. I would think you're probably going to see burn injuries. I mean, if it's an electrical shock, but you could also see a knee injury or a back injury or an arm injury if somebody's fallen while they're trying to do this. I mean, I would think with the snow and ice on the ground, there's a chance that carrying tools and stuff like that to the job site area, you could fall. I mean, there's all sorts of things that could happen.
Yeah, absolutely, all sorts of things. Of course, obviously, especially when they're traveling to where trees have fallen over because of a storm, and that's what's causing the power outage, and then they're having to climb in and around limbs and all to get to where they need to be. Poles that are partially broken or fully broken, and I've sadly represented some who have fallen from the pole that they were working on. I've represented others who've had things fall on top of them, heavy items, tree limbs, etc., fall on top of them. So you get all of that, and then wintertime storms, very slick out where they are, and they slip and fall and can be injured as a result of that. So you can have a wide variety of injuries that aren't from the electricity itself causing the injury. Obviously, you can get the electrical injuries, and unfortunately, when you're dealing with linemen in the amount of power that they are dealing with, frequently those electrical injuries, if they have that kind of an issue come up, then that can be fatal, unfortunately. So.
Right. And we've had an episode on that. There is actually death and survivorship benefits that come into workers' comp as well. So there's a lot of different things that happen here. So Jeff, let's kind of, obviously we're focusing this on the topic of linemen and those kind of injuries that they may sustain. But from a workers' compensation standpoint, the benefits are similar, right? I mean, you've got the time off work while they're off work due to the doctor's orders to get medical treatment or recovery. They're still going to get paid during that period, part of their average weekly wages, right?
Correct. It's the same workers' comp benefits that any other injured worker is going to be entitled to receive, which is temporary total disability benefits, or sometimes referred to as lost wage benefits. Medical, as we spoke about a while ago, which and under workers' comp there are no co-pays, no deductibles from there, and you do have a right to choose your doctor under workers' comp, so they can't direct you to go to one doctor. You can choose who you treat with for the injury. Depending on the severity of the injury, you can get permanent disability benefits that can be permanent partial disability or permanent total disability. And potentially, if it is career ending, then we can look at vocational retraining as well to retrain someone into another field.
Right. And when I mentioned the average week, sorry, I'm having trouble talking today. The average weekly wage, that calculation is actually complex, and we went through in episode 77 and really did a good breakout of how that's done. And actually, if they had a side job, potentially that income is also compensable under workers' comp, which always, again, surprises me. I remember saying that when we recorded the episode, but
Yes.
there's a lot that goes in it. Kentucky workers' comp benefits, typically speaking, are relatively generous compared to other states. And I like the fact that even if you had that second job, again, Kentucky will help offset the cost of that as well to an extent.
Kentucky will help off. Yes, that your wages from other employment can be used in calculating the average weekly wage. The benefits in Kentucky for workers' comp, frankly, are, in my opinion, they ought to be higher than what they are from there, but they are better than several of our surrounding states.
And Jeff, I mean, around here in this region of Western Kentucky, you've got West Kentucky Rural Electric, here locally, Murray Electric.
Correct.
Paducah Power. I mean, and all of these guys are probably dispatching trucks at one time or another, and they may be calling on other power companies to say, hey, can we borrow some of your guys? And again, that's kind of how that network works out. I'm again, as we said earlier in the episode, I'm always really, really surprised at at how those guys, can share resources like that. That's just fantastic.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I talked about if someone if from another state is here working, and the vice versa occurs to some extent. If you've got somebody, a lineman in Kentucky who's primarily based in Kentucky, worked for West Kentucky Rural Electric, for instance, and they are they traveled to North Carolina or to Florida to help restore power to the people affected by a storm down there. If they get hurt down there, there is potential workers' compensation coverage in Kentucky. So, they need to also look at which state is going to be the best for them to pursue their claim. And, when someone that is, someone is hurt outside of Kentucky, there are certain situations where Kentucky will accept jurisdiction over that claim. It's called extraterritorial coverage under Kentucky Revised Statute 342.670. And if it applies in that situation, then Kentucky would accept coverage. The other state where it occurred would likely accept coverage, and then you got to figure out which state's going to be the better state for that worker. And most of the time in these lineman type situations, one of the primary things that you look at is whether the worker's work is primarily located in Kentucky. And with linemen, like West Kentucky Rural Electric, they mainly work in Western Kentucky. So if they are traveling to another state, Kentucky's still going to accept jurisdiction over that claim in all likelihood.
That makes sense. And the one thing that I love to come back and have you explain is that, these guys are obviously tough. They're out in those kind of weather conditions and those kind of working environments. But, rather than trying to just tough out that injury, hey, I'll rub some salt, rub some dirt on it and get on down the road and not worry about it. You do have a responsibility to notify your employer, right? Do you want to talk specifically about that issue?
Yes, yeah. If you're injured on the job as a lineman or any other position for that matter, it doesn't matter what your job is. If you're injured on the job in Kentucky, then you are required to notify your employer. Statute says as soon as practicable after the work injury. That varies according to a variety of factors. If you lift something and your back starts hurting, and you think, well, it's just strained muscle, it's going to go away, and you don't give notice immediately, that does not mean that you've lost your claim from that standpoint. So if you've got an employer that's saying, well, you didn't give, or an insurance carrier saying you didn't give timely notice or we're denying the claim, you need to talk to an attorney because there's certain instances where that is not required. One thing that I've seen in the past, I don't see it as much as I used to see it, is some employers tried to say you had to report the claim within 24 hours of the injury or before you leave work on the day of the injury. That's never been the law in Kentucky. I've never seen a judge say notice that was given a week or so after the injury was not due in timely. I've never seen them say that was too late. From there, you're not required to give notice within 24 hours of the injury from that standpoint. So, yeah, and that applies to linemen the same as it does to anyone else. Obviously, if it's an injury where you seek medical treatment that day, the employer is probably going to know about it because somebody's going to call them and say, Jim fell off the pole and he's got to go there. And of course now they use lift trucks quite a bit if they can get to the lift truck out to where they need to be. But if that's happened, the supervisor is going to know that you've been taken to the hospital from that standpoint. So that's a lot of times notice in these is given by somebody else because a person had to seek medical treatment, if they've been taken off by ambulance or something.
I would think, though, that you may not want to rely on that being the case. I would
Absolutely,
probably want to be
you don't.
proactive and make sure
Correct.
that you've actually communicated that, right?
Correct.
And it can't be to a coworker. It needs to be somebody kind of up the chain, right?
It's got to be somebody above you in the chain of command. So,
So
your
supervisor,
supervisors,
manager, HR person.
yeah, supervisor's fine. If they got some factories have a plant nurses department. and that, reporting that there is fine from that standpoint, or the HR individual, anybody that's above you in the food chain, so to speak, is appropriate to notify of the injury. It does not have to be written. Verbal notice is fine in Kentucky. Written notice, you can prove you provided it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
text message,
Email.
yeah. Matter of fact, I was talking to a potential client earlier this week, and I told them send the notice by text message, so we got documentation if they tried it. He's already verbally done it, and I said, well, let's make sure we got documentation that it was provided. So,
Never hurts. I mean,
Never
never hurts at all. You had mentioned the in some facilities they have a nurse's station or a medical station there on site, and a lot of times they may encourage you to go over there. But there's another important right in Kentucky, especially if you've been injured outside of Kentucky. You may not be aware of this, but in Kentucky, as a worker, as an employee, you've got the right to choose your own doctor. Do you want to talk about why that's so important? Because you may think, well, I had to go here or I had to go there. No, that's not the case in Kentucky law.
And no, it's not. Kentucky allows the injured worker to choose their medical provider. And frankly, it's not just the doctors you go to, but where you go to physical therapy and anything of that nature is
Your pharmacy.
Your pharmacy is a medical provider, so you get to pick your medical providers in Kentucky. And there's a great deal of benefit from doing that. There's a couple of caveats to that you have to be, so it's just not a carte blanche you get to pick and you can change 100 times and you're still good. Once you make the insurance company can make you designate a doctor as your gatekeeper doctor. And once you designate that doctor, now that doctor can refer you to anybody that they wish to refer you to without any problems, but you can only change your gatekeeper doctor one time without the insurance company approval. And then if you try to change it a second time, you've got to get approval from the insurance company. And what I've seen occur in the past is, the person goes to the family doctor, designates the family doctor refers them to a specialist, and then the insurance company wants them to change the gatekeeper to the specialist and then say, well, you've changed one time, so you don't get to change again. I tell my clients, don't do that, just stay with your family doctor. From there, the other caveat to you get to choose your providers is if your employer in the insurance company has a managed care network, then you have to choose a doctor within that managed care network. They cannot tell you you've got to go to this certain doctor, but they can say, here's all the family doctors we have in our network or all the neurosurgeons we have in our network. You've got to choose somebody within this network to be your family doctor or your neurosurgeon or whatever specialist it is that you may need. So they can make you stay within that network, but you get to pick the doctors within that network, and they are required to have choices within that network.
That makes sense. And in fact, coming back to that designated physicians form that you just talked about, Form 113, friends, if you're listening to this, in the show notes, I'm going to have a link to episode 68. And episode 68, the majority of that episode actually does talk about the importance of that designated physician's form, and to Jeff's point, why you might want to start with your family physician and how their focus might be a little bit different from another physician that could be recommended to you, especially by the company. But also in that episode 68, there's information on the reimbursement form that's used if you're traveling for medical treatment or stuff related to your actual medical treatment resulting from your workplace injury, where you can actually be reimbursed. And that's mileage and some other expenses. So that's a pretty good episode to kind of keep in the back pocket.
Correct.
Jeff, I mean, just because of the nature of what linemen are working with, and again, a lot of times, it's electrical stuff and high winds are blowing. There's all sorts of things that go wrong. And I briefly mentioned this at the outset, but there is a possibility that the tragic situation happens and suddenly we have a workplace fatality. And we don't like to talk about that very often, but let's talk a little bit about what we covered in episode 36 when we were talking about workplace fatalities and kind of how workers' comp steps in on that and kind of what benefits might be still available.
If someone sadly dies as a result of a work-related injury, then they are there's different recoveries that are available in that situation. One is, If the death occurs within 4 years of the injury, because sometimes, unfortunately, death can occur later. I've represented individuals where they've had a work injury and then several years later had to have surgery as a result of that and then have an embolism and pass away. And if it's more than 4 years after, then this first benefit doesn't apply. If it's, if the death is within 4 years of the event, the work injury, then the estate of the individual is entitled to a lump sum death benefit that changes year to year. It's got a cost of living adjustment to some extent built into that, so every year that adjusts a little bit. In addition to that payment that goes to the estate, and that's that's primarily for funeral expenses and various other things, obviously associated with that as well. But that goes to the estate and then is distributed from the estate to whoever the heirs are, either at law or if there's a will, the beneficiaries under the will. Additional benefits that are also payable in that situation are benefits to the surviving spouse. They receive a percentage of the injured worker's average weekly wage at the time that they passed away. Any minor children would receive benefits, also a percentage based on the average weekly wage, and that can vary depending on the number of children that are involved, or minor children. And the benefits to the children can actually potentially go up to age 22, depending on if they're in an accredited education. Otherwise, it would normally terminate at age 18 unless they're in an accredited educational institution. So if they're in college, then the benefits would still continue to the children from that standpoint. And then if someone is actually dependent, so if you've got a parent that's actually dependent upon the worker that passed away, then those people who are actually, family members that are actually dependent upon the worker can also potentially receive benefits under the Workers' Compensation Act.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, these guys have a tough job, but it's the one thing that having done so many of these episodes with you is just to understand that workers' comp benefits are there, and hopefully, if they ever need them, they can take advantage of the system that provides that safety net for these workers and their families.
Exactly, that's what the system was designed for. The entire Workers' Compensation Act is to provide a safety net for the injured workers, and it provides some protection to the employers because you don't get the same amount of recovery as a person would for a negligence lawsuit because there's no pain and suffering in workers' comp. And so, but it is a safety net that's there for the family in those situations, but those are always tragic events. And unfortunately, I've represented too many in that situation. So.
Yeah. Jeff, you've actually got two offices. You maintain an office here in Murray, Calloway County. You have a second office that you opened up a little bit more than a year ago up in Hopkinsville in Christian County. But because it's workers' comp, you can represent people really all across the state, right?
Correct. I do represent people all across the state. I've from Paducah to Bikeville, so to speak. I have cases going on now with clients that are well outside the West Kentucky area. But my primary office is in Murray, Kentucky, where I've been at for greater than 30 years now. And then I do have the satellite office in Hopkinsville, but I represent clients in other locations. I've got several clients in the Bowling Green area, in the Louisville area, and I meet them. I can meet them up there at times, or frequently we're able to do things over the phone and by Zoom and by email as well. In most of the hearings now with workers' comp are being done over Zoom from that, which has made it even easier.
Yeah, it's just a video call, right? They don't have to travel. They don't have to go through the pain and the logistics and the expense of doing that.
Correct.
Yeah, that's fantastic, actually.
Yeah, that's been one good thing that's come out of the COVID pandemic was the workers' comp system going to the video conference, to the Zoom conferences, and that has it's cut down a lot on travel for everybody, including the clients. So.
Right. Fantastic. Jeff, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way to reach me is through the phone. My phone number at my office is 270-753-0053. Also 800 number, 1-800-844-5108. You call that number, you'll get a live person answering the phone 95+% of the time if it's during business hours. And that's the best way to reach me. You can reach me by email at jeff@jeffrobertslaw.com or through my website as well. But the phone's the best way to do so.
Well, I tell you what, as we wrap up today's episode, I just want to give a salute out to the linemen. And if you're traveling on the road and you see these big utility trucks coming, get out of their way. They've got important work to do, and maybe give them a wave. They definitely are doing great work for people that need their help. And if you've ever gone through a power outage, especially in the middle of winter, you know how rough that can be. And these guys are out there trying to help all of us. So, once again, hats off to these guys. And Jeff, I really appreciate your time, buddy. I know how busy you are down here, but I really appreciate the work you do and the time you take to put out this information that hopefully kind of breaks down some of these issues, but also allows the audience to go, oh, okay, that I wasn't aware of that, or hey, that's useful information. I'm glad you told me about that. And hopefully, if you hear this and you've got the opportunity to share this on your social media. If you're listening, I mean, that would also be helpful because these guys are doing great work. They're doing hard work, and they're doing work that a lot of us just wouldn't want to do, especially in those kind of weather conditions.
Absolutely.
But good deal. Jeff, we'll be back here in about 2 weeks, guy.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Jeff will return in 2 weeks. Until then, he invites you to visit jeffrobertslaw.com and follow his firm on Facebook. At the Roberts Law Office, you'll find a history of small town service and big city results.